Hello. Now we will see about Sleuth and Zipkin. Sleuth is another tool from the Spring Cloud family. It is used to generate a trace ID, span ID, and add this information to the service calls in the headers so that it can be used by tools like Zipkin to store, index, and process log files. By seeing the definition, we may not understand, but I'll make you understand. Before knowing about a sleuth and Jipkin, we need to understand in a real time problem. Like in a distributed environment, we will be having many services. If you are working in a real time project, if you are working in an MNC company, and you will be having plenty of microservices, and each microservice is interconnected with another service. So during that situation, in a distributed environment, if we are having multiple services, for example, as a tutorial, I have taken only two or three services. In this tutorial, user microservice, student service, account service, but in real time, not like that. In a project, not like that. We will be having multiple services, and in that multiple services, each services might be interconnected. So that time, if any service is failing, some some other service, any unknown service is failing, and how we are going to track that service? Only that particular service is having the issue. So in a distributed environment, it would be quite impossible to track, even though we are having logs and all. It is somewhat very difficult. So that is where landed Sleuth and Jipkin. And if we are using Sleuth and Jipkin, our job is more easier, more simpler. Then how Sleuth and Jipkin is going to provide the solution such kind of scenarios? So Sleuth and Jipkin, what they are providing is Sleuth is one kind of configuration, and Jipkin is coming in the form of a jar file that would be treated as a server. So I will show you how to download Jipkin server, and let us focus on the concept itself. So whenever user microservice is trying to hit gateway, and user microservice wanted to hit a student service, and via the student service it may connect with the account service also. So here, if we are using sleuth, what it will do is it will create one trace id, and the trace id would be unique for all the services. Because user microservice is trying to hit a student service, then it will form trace id for user microservice, trace id for gateway, trace id for student service. And each service is going to have one span id, and that span id unique id for within the service. Here we need to understand trace id is for common to across all the across entire application, but span id is common within the service. So that is the difference we need to identify. And along with that, we will be having service name. Each service will be having service name, user microservice or student service, account service. We are defining in the properties as a service name. So whenever hit is coming to gateway via Eureka server, then it will give some trace id. It could be 1234, and service span id it could be xyz, and service name user microservice. So when we are hitting, we will be able to see those logs in console. When we are running the application, we will be able to see in console. But this trace id, span id, service name displayed in console, it would be somewhat easy for the developers, whoever developing the application. But external world also want to see, because in a project external stakeholders also involved, they also want to see which service exactly failing. For that, Zipkin is providing one UI dashboard. So when we are running Zipkin server, so it will come in the form of one UI graphical interface. In that, it will be clearly indicating which service is failing, what time it was failing, all the log information it would be available. So how we are going to use sleuth, how we are going to configure Zipkin and all, we will see in the next slide. So for sleuth dependencies, we need to add in pom.xml. So that is org.springframework.cloud, Spring Cloud Starter hyphen sleuth. So this is the dependency we need to add in pom.xml. And this form.xml is quite common for user service and gateway and Eureka server and other microservices as well. So wherever we are using microservices, inside those form.xml, we need to add the sleuth dependencies. Along with sleuth dependencies, we also need to add sleuth properties. That property is a Spring Sleuth reactor instrumentation type equal to decorate on each. This property we need to ensure. So once we are adding this sleuth dependency and sleuth properties across all the services including gateway and Eureka server. And after that, Zipkin dependencies also we need to add. Wherever pom.xml is there, we need to add Zipkin dependencies. And here we need to understand that sleuth properties we need to add only in gateway itself. Gateway server. Other microservices and all, sleuth properties not required. If we are adding also, it is not a problem, but might not be required. And Zipkin properties, we need to add entire services and gateway and Eureka server and other services. So that will be coming in the form of Zipkin properties spring dot zipkin dot base hyphen url equal to http localhost 9411. This is a default and Zipkin server is running under 9411. So where this server URI is formed means I will show you in the next slide. So basically for sleuth and Zipkin configuration, we need to add sleuth dependencies and Zipkin dependencies and sleuth properties and Zipkin properties. And as I said, Zipkin is coming in the form of a server. So you need to visit zipkin.io pages a quickstart.html. There you can go here. Since we are working in Java application, you can go here Java release. If you are clicking this one, you will be able to get the jar file. And once you are getting the jar file, you need to run java my hyphen jar and zipkin.jar. So if you are considering this, so the jar file will exactly after downloading this one, jar file will be looking like this zipkin hyphen server and 2.23.18 hyphen execution dot jar. So when I was recording this session, this is the latest jar. So I have downloaded. After downloading, you can go to respective path. You can keep it in your path, and I kept it in under C folder, Zipkin folder I created in under C drive, and that same path I was giving here, and CD Zipkin, and I was in Zipkin path, and after that I need to give Java hyphen jar, and this is the path. This is the Zipkin jar file name. Zipkin hyphen server 2.23 hyphen 18. After that you can give enter so that this screen will appear. This is the Zipkin server and that server is running under 9411 http 127.0.0.1 colon 9411. If you are trying to access this localhost 9411, the screen will be appearing like this. This is the screen once we are running the Zipkin server, it will be appearing. And here only we will be able to see the logs, trace IDs, span IDs, service name. all the details are visible. So this is a more friendly, user friendly for the any of the stakeholders, any of the users, any of the developers, any of the project managers. For everyone it is this is a user interface, it would be very easy. For developers, they might be concentrating on console. For that also we will be able to get it. So this is the theory about sleuth and Zipkin server, and we will see how we are going to achieve practically in next session. And once again I would like to re-summarize, like what we need to know is sleuth and Zipkin is basically intention of the so intention is like tracing of the issues and the issue finding, and after that we can provide the solution. But we need to identify quick solution. We need for that we need to identify the problem, exactly where the problem is happening. So for tracking, for debugging all those issues, Sleuth and Zipkin is more user friendly. For that, it is creating trace ID, span ID, and service name. And trace ID is for common for across all the application, and span ID for within the service. We will be having individual services within the service. Span ID is very common. And for that, we need to configure in terms of dependencies and properties. We need to ensure dependencies, properties, and then we need to download Zipkin server. Once we downloaded, we need to go to command prompt, and there you need to give. And for running the server, we need to use the Java command, java jar Zipkin server.jar. Then it will be running. If this screen is appearing, your Zipkin server is ready. After that, your screen will appear like this. If you are achieving this, then you are on right track. Then we need to implement. In upcoming session, I will implement dependencies and required properties, and I will show how to run the server practically. Till then, thank you.